If your gardening tools look rusty and beat up, that's no reason to discard them. You can restore the cutting edge on them in less than 10 minutes. In this video, I'll show you how it's done and I'll show you what you need for it. First off, these tools are made of mild steel rust. So you should keep the tools out of the rain so they don't look like this. But even if they do so, you can still restore the cutting edge on them. You can remove some of the chips or nicks in the blade so that working with the tool is going to require a whole lot less effort again. I'll show you what you need to get this done. You are going to need files. And files are best kept in a leather pouch like this. There's all kinds of files, short ones and bigger ones and with very coarse teeth. This is actually called a rasp, and it works best on wood. So don't use those ones. What you need is about an 8 or 10 inch mill file or X file. Okay, that's what its name is, X file sometimes, depending on how the manufacturers market them. If you only have a small file like this, it's going to take forever to remove some of the nicks in the blade. So that's files. One more thing that you need is a sanding block, sandpaper. This is 100 grit sandpaper, and this one here is 200 grit sandpaper. So one more thing on this mill file is one side is single cut. You can see that teeth on the file have only been raised in one direction, and you can see here where there is no teeth on it and here where the teeth start. They all run in one direction all the way to the top. On the other side there, teeth run in two directions, and there's another faint line here that you can see in good lighting, and another faint line at the top there showing or telling you that this side is the double cut side. Teeth run this way as well as this way on it. So the double cut side cuts on push and pull. The single cut side only cuts on the push stroke. Okay, just keep that one in mind so you're not grunting there in vain. You don't need power tools to restore the edge on an axe. It's nice to have, but my major problem is with power tools is one, control, fine control that is, and another one is that the most grinding wheels have a grit size of about 50, and I just pulled sandpaper here in front of you, and it's got a grit size of 100 or 220, so they are a little too coarse, and by successive runs on a power tool is not gonna make it any sharper, because the grit size on the grinding wheel is still 50 grit. So I do recommend that you clamp your blade down to a bench, but again, you don't have to. I have just this makeshift table here, or a slice of plywood that's clamped down to a handrail. So to get started, take the double cut side and start removing rust and metal. You have to remove metal to the depth of the chips and nicks on the blade. Ideally, you would need two hands on a file there, and this would be clamped down, but again, you don't have to. So I just show you this way. But it's definitely safer if you clamp it down. There, with the double cut file, just wait for the camera to focus, you can see the rust being removed. you can still see some of the nicks in the blade, and if I hold it this way you can still see some flat spots on the blade. There, 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 and further down here. Okay, so flip it over, work with the double cut file. Until you remove enough material, enough metal. Again, this is mild steel, and you can reshape it in reasonable amount of time. Okay, that's the other side on it. It's not beautiful, it's still got some flat spots on it. Just wait for the camera to focus. There, some flat spots to it, but it's looking already a lot better, and the edge is looking a lot straighter than it did before. Maybe I should have started with that, but you can kind of see that the edge is, as I rotate it, the edge is fairly straight now. It's got a couple of tiny flat spots on it, and you can see the filing marks in it, how it looks like when I do it with a double cut file. When I repeat the same with a single cut file, those file marks will disappear more and more. And for this super fancy, take a 100 grit sandpaper, wrap your sanding block with it, just like so, and sand the edge just like so. And again, this doesn't need a power tool. There. And it's still got flat spots on it because I need to remove more metal to the depth of those nicks. But again, you don't have to, and this edge is already working a lot more efficiently than the rusted dull edge that we started with 5 minutes ago. These snips also work the same way, and it's got some huge nicks at the base of the blade here, where a big branch, somebody tried to cut a big branch with it, and it displaced some metal. The edge is shiny because I polished it so you can see it at least. It was done much the same way. First, particularly here at the base, where there was some metal displaced with a big branch, I went with the double cut file. It's kind of hard to do it and not hit the camera or the tripod at the same time, but let's see, I can try it this way. So I removed some of this big nick there and reshaped the edge just like so. A couple of nice and easy strokes there. Not so much at the tip, because you're not cutting with the tip, you're cutting here at the base for most of your effort. There, and then with the single cut to remove some of those filing marks. Just take a look at it from a little closer. Let's see, how do we do this? You can kind of see some filing marks on it, but by now those filing marks are small. Thereabouts, you can see some filing marks on it. There, run this direction, and there, even smaller. And if I did it with a 100 grit sandpaper, those filing marks disappear rapidly. Just open it big, put it there where you can kind of see it. There, the edge is nice and straight and flat with no flat spots. On the back side, you open it just like so. Put your sanding block on it, flat. You only go flat on the back side. and it does not need filing from the back side. There you can see where the sanding block is touching it, and you can see the edge being restored. It's still got a couple of flat spots on it, like here and here, where it's a little blacker along the edge than at other spots. And if I try to rotate it this way, you can also see those same flat spots. So with a little more filing from the first side where we started, from this side, we'll take care of that. And this part of the blade here, this part of the blade only needs filing or sanding from usually one direction. This usually. And with a couple of strokes just like that, you can see how much shinier the edge has become. And in cutting action, I don't want to cut my finger. This is where a twig to be cut is resting against, and shearing action happens this way. So this one doesn't have to be super sharp in any way. It just has to be a uniform flat surface this way. Don't worry about it much from this direction. Okay, so basically that's the lay of the land, and that's how you can restore the edges on these fairly fast, under 10 minutes per tool. Okay, just keep practicing.